Good afternoon to everyone. I think I'm going to get us started here. This might be the first panel I've seen today that started right on time, but let's go for it, right? I don't know if, did everyone get the cupcakes? I was just telling them there was really good cupcakes. Please don't leave now. There will be cupcakes later. There are really good cupcakes up there if you can get them. Anyways, I am Amy Kessler. I am Director of Latin America at the Climate Action Reserve. I have the great honor of working with an amazing team to support the development and implementation of protocols across Latin America. We have a really amazing panel, so I'm really excited to moderate this panel today. I think it's really one of those important panels we have at the conference. And we have some really amazing panelists. I'm going to allow them to each present themselves. Oscar, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Oscar Espinosa, and I'm the head of international affairs of Bioforestal. Bioforestal is a nature-based solution based in Mexico, working mostly with local communities and ejidos in our country.
Hello, I'm Elsy Alvarado. I am the Director of Project Relations for Cool Effect. Cool Effect is a nonprofit based out of Northern California. We represent projects that has passed our vetting process.
Hello, my name is Tim Hayden. I'm the Carbon Department Director for the Yurok tribe. The Yurok tribe is the largest tribe in California with over 6,000 enrolled tribal members. We have federally recognized fishing rights on the lower Klamath River and currently manage around just over 47,000 acres of IFM projects in Humboldt and Del Norte County.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us, and we'll obviously dive more into all the work you guys do in a moment. So the Climate Action Reserve, we have worked very closely with the communities and ejidos, particularly in Mexico, but throughout Latin America as we expand. I'll focus a bit more on Mexico because that's certainly where the bulk of our work is. Currently we have around 300 projects listed and registered in Mexico, with another 100, in the process of listing, and 91% of those are on communal or ejido lands. So really from the very beginning of the design and development of the protocol, and I wasn't there at that time, John Nickerson was, he's in the audience, shout out. Really the thinking was, we develop a protocol, it has to be built for the ejidos and communities. 80% of forests in Mexico are on communal land, so really you can't have a forest protocol in Mexico without understanding how the government structure works there. And building the protocol for them. So that we built safeguards that are aligned with their communal government structure, how they make decisions, how they diffuse information, and enabling them to be able to govern their project and have that representation throughout the entire implementation of their project. So it's really been a key consideration of our protocol and work from the very beginning. That all being said, I'm going to very quickly, and then I'll pass it to our amazing panelists. I had the really big honor yesterday of sitting down and talking to one of the communities we work with. I think they actually just came in, San Juan Paran Gutierrez. It's an amazing project in Michoacan. They started back in 2020 at IFM project. And as I was saying, talking with them, I was able to reflect on some things. Over the last couple of years, I think we all perhaps know that the market's gone through a lot of changes in the last few years. There's been a lot of new actors, a lot of new demands on the market, a lot of new scrutiny. And us as a registry, we've also gone through experiencing that and responding to that as quickly and adeptly as we can. And we've made some changes in our protocol to strengthen the rigor of the protocol and ensure conservative accounting and really critical pieces of the protocol. And that then trickles down to how it works with the communities, right? So we make these changes. There's all these things going on internationally, and we as a registry respond and make changes. And then the communities receive that. They're the ones on the ground doing the projects. Sometimes it's hard. It's really challenging. We had a number of phone calls. I feel like I spoke with like every ejido community in Mexico last year, over the last couple of years to talk through these changes and explain why we made these changes. What does this change mean for your project? Why are you receiving less credits? Because a lot of times they had projected credits and now they're receiving less. And that's brutal. Those are brutal conversations to have. And then they, sometimes we're speaking with the governance of the community leaders, and they have to go and tell their entire community what's going on. So it's, it requires a significant amount of trust from them. And I think when I was talking to San Juan Par and Gutierrez yesterday, it really struck me that in the market, we focus so much on one side of this trust equation. I think, we've really talked about the confidence the buyers have to have, the market must have, and the protocols and the projects. But I think we also need to talk about the other side of that equation, and that's the communities and a really significant amount of trust they must have in us, and the really big responsibility we thus have in receiving that trust and earning that trust, and how we can do that. So I really just wanted to frame this conversation with those reflections, because it's really challenging, but just really putting it forefront that the people that are doing the work and the amount of significant trust they must have in us. So with that, I'm gonna ask a question to Tim. So the Yurok tribe has had a carbon project registered in the California compliance market since 2012. Can you talk to me a bit, or the audience, about how that project was started and really the role that the tribe played in forming that project, and what challenges you guys have faced over the last 10 years?
All right. Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you for those comments and framing this discussion. I think that's really important, and so thank you for that. So where do I start? Yeah. So the Yurok tribe. Let me give you a little background on the Yurok tribe. As I mentioned, we're up in Northern California, and the Yurok tribe is really a fishing tribe. Culture, and history, and really our communities are really centered around the river. It's very central to the tribe. And unfortunately, history, colonization, the tribe's lost most of its land base. So the Yurok Tribal Reservation extends in the lower 40 miles of the Klamath River, about a mile on each side of the river. And so one of the tribe's constitutional goals really is to restore that ancestral land base. Over the years, let me see, the tribe signed its constitution, and signed its constitution in '93, and really got its natural resources departments and really going in '96, and since that time it's really expanded beyond fisheries management into forest management, wildlife restoration and recovery, wildland fire. So really developed a really strong technical base and capacity to engage in resource management. So as Amy mentioned, when the cap and trade program first began, our leadership reached out to the Area Resources Board saying this may be a good program that would work for us. Help the tribe achieve its goals for self-determination, but also, as a tool to help us finance and acquire, some of those lost lands. And I think from the story I have is, we reached out to their resources board and said, well, what about tribes? And I think they weren't necessarily, considered in that early on in the program. So we worked with them, and certainly came up with some solutions. And so we developed our first project with help from New Forest, was one of our partners, and developed our first project, about a 9,000 acre project. And so that was our first one, and since then we've developed several others, and like I mentioned, we've got about 47,000 acres in projects right now. And I think the second part of your question was challenges?
Yeah, just over 10 years,
Sure.
there must have been a lot that's happened, so any challenges and how you've...
yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I'll be quick here. I think there's a lot of challenges, of course, funding, and permitting, planning. But I think a big challenge for us was really early on was capacity building. We had great partners and support, but developing that technical capacity, understanding the program, engaging, in policy, when needed. But developing that capacity has been a challenge. And since those early days, we've taken on all of our management in-house and continuing to grow. So capacity building has been definitely a challenge.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've heard about the Yurok project for many years now, and it always strikes me as so amazing that you guys came to ARB and said, hey, we want to be at the table. We want to project ourselves. And you took that on, and now, it's one of the most successful projects in the California compliance market. Turning to Mexico, Oscar.
Yeah.
So the projects in Mexico being developed by Bioforestal are much newer compared to Yurok, really been developed in the last couple of years under the Reserves Mexico Forest Protocol. How has Bioforestal as a project developer approached engaging with local communities to ensure their participation and ultimate benefit in these projects and in compliance with the social safeguards that we have in the protocol?
Yeah, thank you. So first, Amy, thanks for the invitation to the amazing panel. And well, you touched on a key point here that with your remarks, the trust relationship that needs to be built upon the whole system and the whole value chain. So in Bioforestal, we've always thought the communities as the essence and core of everything we do, and as well a pillar of the carbon market. And one of the main assets of Bioforestal has been building this trust relationship with the communities we work for, and since the beginning, include them in the whole process of designing, planning, the working activities they have to do on the forest. And that takes a lot of, as Tim mentioned, a lot of capacity building. So we help them, guide them, support them, for them to build these capacities. And we have to start from the beginning. In Mexico, the carbon market is scarcely known. As Amy was saying, it's growing. There's a lot of projects, but it's a very new theme. It's a new area of opportunity for the communities and for the ejidos. And it's a big and important area. But we have to start from the beginning. So we guide them through, and with them we build upon everything that's knowledge transfer. We do a lot of knowledge transferring, since the capacity building, the skills, the learning about climate change, about the value of their ecosystems, about the important work that they're doing conserving their forests. And since the communities in Mexico mostly have already had a long history of wood harvesting, so they are very aware of the value that the forest has, and we try to build with them that long-term relationship. We always want a long-term relationship with them, and try to ample the spectrum of the work that's done there. It's not only a conversation about tons captured. Tons captured is a collateral beneficial outcome of what really happens inside a community when they get involved into a project, and it starts transforming transversally their whole life. And fortunately, we are working right now. We're working with more than 50 communities in Mexico, from the northern part of the Sierra of Chihuahua, till the southeast jungles of Selva Maya. And it's a wide and very diverse array of cultures, of practices, of governance systems. And one thing for us that it's vital is to comprehend every single community, have a very, very deep understanding of their inheritance, their ethnicities, their cultures, in order for us to strengthen those governance systems. And that's one of the social safeguards that's implied by the protocol. And I think that carbon projects do help in strengthening these governance systems, and we build that with them. We want to make them an active participant of the projects.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's always an interesting equation or question as to how the carbon project itself can recognize and respect the existing governance structure and the way they make decisions, while also strengthening it, working with them to support, really a strong organization and governance. It's maybe a delicate balance there.
Exactly, yeah.
Wonderful, Elsy. So I'm wondering, Cool Effect is, of course, a big supporter of many Mexico forest projects, as well as other amazing projects around the world as an intermediary. So wondering how you assess all these different considerations and really what metrics do you have for thinking about inclusion of communities, indigenous peoples?
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. I'm very honored to be here with all of you. Cool Effect has a very strong vetting system. We are a nonprofit organization, and we have a responsibility for both the buyer and the project. So we try to be as transparent with both of them. So we don't work with all the buyers, and we don't work with all the projects. So we have a very strong vetting system. For example, as of today, we probably vetted 5,000 projects, and we have only worked with like around 54 projects around the world. Some of them are Mexico IFM. And how do we vet the Mexico IFM? Well, we have several stages, several steps. One of them, we have a scientific team that reviews all the paperwork that is out there. We also look into online and see what's been written about those projects. And not only the projects, but the ejido or the community itself and the people part of those communities. We also have a very strong, and this is extremely important to me as I'm the director of project relations. So I have to have a very strong relationship with the project manager or the project developer. That's also part of the vetting. That is also taken into account whether we are going to work with those projects or not. If I can see that the project developer is honest and transparent with us as we are with them. We have a very clear pricing structure. Everybody knows the buyer and the buyer knows what we charge, and the project developers also know what we're charging and what they're getting. So a part of that, we also go and visit the projects. We want to see what the project is all about before we even start selling the project. And if we think that the project is very good, we will continue our relationship with them. And then eventually, we will go and check where the money went. And if we have a very strong, solid relationship, we go and visit the project a second time around to see how they have invested the money, to make sure that most importantly, the forest is protected, and then that the community itself, the general community, has benefits.
Wow. 54 projects out of 5,000. That's like 1%. I don't know how you guys sleep or live or do anything. That's amazing. I'm assuming the projects you visit would be the 54. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, wow, amazing. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Tim, I'm going to come back to you. As I mentioned earlier, the Yurok project's been around for over a decade. So I'm wondering if you can give advice to newer projects, such as those in Mexico, on communal lands. How can these projects be designed to ensure long-term inclusion and benefit for the communities?
Yeah, I think, I put a lot of thought into this last week. Okay, I think, having a clear vision for, the outcome, and I think for our leadership, it's been, as I mentioned, very clear to, one of the primary goals is to, restore our land base. and as a way, well, one way to, meet our self-determination goals, managing our own resources is very important. So I think, the council's vision, our leadership's vision was fundamental to that. And as I mentioned, their Yurok culture. So with that in mind, of course, of the 4 projects we have, each one's been developed using different financing strategies. Some with, loans, grants, but offsets have been really key to, using as financing, well, as an asset really for financing leverage. And so, each one of the acquisitions is managed a little bit different, but I think, overall the goal has been to, manage the tribe's resources in a way that meets, the cultural needs for the tribe. Of course, supports our tribal fishery and restoration. I think, part of that engagement is we have a workforce development plan, so we're really trying to engage our tribal members and put them to work, really, out on the landscape. So we do a lot of restoration work, direct, and everything from fire and fuels, roads work. And so I think really engaging, excuse me, allowing tribal members to be on the landscape and earn a living, a living wage, and really be active with the management. I think they understand, firsthand, what it means to really manage their own resources. And I think there's some feedback to our leadership and helps them understand, if we need to adapt. But I think, engaging the community, getting very active with tribal members, and getting them out on the landscape and earning a living. Because, that's really, historically, the rivers provided for the people, and I think, we want to see that to continue. So.
Awesome. Tim, you mentioned that really you guys envisioned or planned to utilize the carbon projects as a mechanism to buy back your historic indigenous lands. Can you speak on that a little bit more, how that worked?
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, I think the key to this is regardless of the financing strategy, offsets have allowed us to really, meet all those needs. The tribe, well, here in California, we're not a casino tribe. Very, small economic base. No, we don't have a tax base. And so, developing that source of revenues, allows us to meet those financing needs, but also, helps us, meet those operational costs and definitely, our resource management costs. There's most of these lands are former commercial timber, lands, and so there's a lot of legacy issues with that. Yes, offsets have been key into financing and supporting, our land management.
Amazing, thank you. Oscar, there's been a lot of discussions globally, but speaking specifically about Mexico, regarding concerns of inclusion or lack of inclusion of communities in carbon projects. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit about that and how Bioforestal and really, more importantly, the communities you've worked with have viewed these discussions and sort of responded to this dialogue.
Yeah, of course. In Bioforestal, for the last couple of years, one of our main intentions and a lot of our focus and work goes into how do we create, design, open spaces for communities' participation in the voluntary carbon market, and also in events like this one. So we're very glad that here in the audience here, there are some Ejido members that some of them flew or even drove here from the Sierra Chihuahua, till LA by car, and came here. Yesterday we hosted a beautiful workshop in which we the leaders, or project coordinators of these ejidos were sharing their experiences around the challenges they meet, the importance of their carbon projects in their community. And I think that it's very important for us to hear that and see that firsthand. Um, just, just last month, for example, Isabel, which is a project coordinator in Selva Maya, was before an audience of women of all around the world in the CIDIDA Summit. No, it's a very important summit of women empowerment in Mexico City. No, women flown from all over different parts of the world, and there she is, no, from Selva Maya, exchanging her experiences, and how this project has transformed the community, and how this project has allowed also more women, no, to be involved with their jungle, no, and the conservation of biodiversity. How they are working very eagerly, no, into incorporating young women and men, no, into working in these projects, and that that's amazing to see, no. Last year also in the Mexico Carbon Forum, we hosted also a panel, no, in which we included these communities, and I think that's I mean, for some, no, maybe may strike as a surprise, but these things does not happen at the rate, no, and the scope that they should. No, just look around the event or other events, or carbon events in the world, and the last thing you'll see is the communities when they are, no, a cornerstone of a lot of the work we do. So we try to open all these spaces. We're designing a big event that's for the New York Climate Week, where we can also include communities from Mexico, but also not only from Mexico, but also from Latin America. And we are fostering these kind of spaces also. And the communities have reacted very strongly about those, no, kind of events, no, and that kind of those spaces, so they can participate. They're here with us, no, and they come all the way from Chihuahua, no, 18-hour drive to come here, no, and present their vision, no, and the exchange of experiences. I think it's vital, no, like a lot of the work we did a month ago was like come with one of the ejidos in a general assembly. They have a proposal for buying their credits, and in order to comply, no, with the social safeguard, no, of the free and prior informed consent, so the assembly approved of a committee, a group of the leaders of the ejido that was in charge of sharing experiences with other ejidos in Mexico. So we drove them around. We went to Chihuahua. No, we had this like a community exchange of experiences. We went with Gregorio, no, to Nuevo San Juan, is the project that Amy was referring at the beginning, and since they have more experience doing that, no, they had the opportunity to share all these experience with them, the challenges, no, what price have you sold, no, what contracts have you signed, no, how have these developers or these buyers, no, are related, how have they been their relationship with the ejidos. And I think that has to happen more often, and that has to happen. We have to make this visible. We always, no, like Elsy was saying, we always foster, no, and the participation of buyers, of stakeholders, and we are always inviting them to come to the communities, because when you see there what's happening there on the ground and how that's changing and impacting their communities, it's a total different game, no, when you can see it there. So we always try to do these kind of things.
Very, very cool, Oscar. A few thoughts. One, I want to mention yesterday they had a workshop, Bioforestal had a workshop in which they gave the platform to different community members that are here. And what I was actually very surprised, I didn't know this, it wasn't just their projects. I thought they were just going to have their communities, their projects, but they had projects from all different project developers, and I loved it. I thought that was like the coolest thing. So thank you for doing that yesterday. Really, really appreciate it. Something else I thought about as you're speaking was, the very first project in Mexico, San Juan de Chao with ICICO. I think Rosendo's here. They were the very first project developers in Oaxaca. And something I loved about that, was seeing them then, after that initial project, the project coordinator, the community members from San Juan de Chao went and visited other communities in Puebla. They went to Cotzingo and San Rafael, and they helped. It was the capacity building of the other communities and kind of sharing of knowledge and experience, and that was really kind of always part of the vision of the protocol. And I don't think we taught you guys to do that, but you just did that organically. So it's even cooler. That just
right.
has developed. So I feel like that's very nice. Thank you. I'm gonna actually, Elsy, I'm gonna come back to you in a second, but I think just based on what Oscar was talking about, I wanted to ask the group a general question of how, what do we think, and maybe we can start with you, Elsy, but, how can events like this include more Indigenous peoples and voices, and what are the barriers? Is it price, is it logistics, is it the agenda, or, what are the barriers to doing that, and how can we do it better?
Yes, sorry. Yes, that's one thing. When I visit the projects, and especially the project developers, I always ask them, are you participating in any event? Which events are you participating? Because I find that extremely important that they are out there talking about their communities to hear, so people can hear their voices. But participating in these events is not only for them, but also we all learn from them, and they learn from other projects similar to theirs. So it is extremely important for the project developers and those communities to participate in projects. I do understand that it is expensive. There are visas requirements. It's a long trip. It's taking time away for what you are supposed to be doing. But participating in projects like this is extremely important because you learn so much, and other people learn from you, and things that, people from his tribe can learn from another indigenous community in Mexico, and vice versa, and make things a lot better. So I think it's extremely important, and projects and events like NACW gives the platform for this kind of opportunities for everybody to participate. And I know it is costly, and there might be ways NACW can help with the cost, but also, I know some of the people in the ejidos couldn't get visas. That was a tricky one this year, I think. And I know that some have written letters for those people to get visas, even though that didn't go through either. But, maybe there is another event that we could do, in Mexico City next time, or something like that.
I'm always pushing for NACW to be Mexico.
Great.
Just a hint.
Yeah, okay, nice. Where's Jenny? Did she hear that? Yeah, we do actually have a special price at NACW for community and HELO members, because we really want to encourage them to be able to attend, and we do support visa letters, but it was very tricky. Tim, anything?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think, events like this are incredible. I mean, I've learned a lot just in the last few days, and just, everything. I mean, there's so much to, not just project management, but how to engage on the policy issues themselves, who the players are, who to talk to, of course, sales and transactions and pricing. It's overwhelming, to be honest. But I think events like this are important. But I think engaging with other tribes, other groups that are interested in this. Like, what are you guys doing? And that's been my experience, where other tribes, other groups reach out to us, and just developing that relationship and that dialogue, I think is important. Just sharing that our experience and getting perspective on what are their challenges and how can we work together. I think here in California, and in the United States, and especially, I know that I know it's different. Situation than in Mexico and other countries, but developing strong tribal voices and groups, and I mean, it's having multiple partners together. I mean, more voices are stronger than one, right? And I think those differing perspectives, differing backgrounds, cultures. It's important to bring all that into that discussion. And so, yes, I mean, this is a great event, and yeah, maybe there's need some like chapter events or something, right?
Yeah,
Regional events.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oscar?
Yes, I think that we firstly, I think that it's very important to open up these spaces. I like what we were doing yesterday, and not only here, but in different forums, in different events, and give them the microphone. That's something very important, and not in a small room, in the corner of the event, or on a far away stand there, but main stage, I would say, main stage. And they need this main stage, and I think that's not very complicated to organize. Secondly, I would say that some of the harshest and more important truths, are the most obvious ones, and I think we have to think of this sector, that it's made by people, for people, and that should be an obvious thing, but sometimes we forget that, and we enter into these very technical discussions around policy, around technology, around frameworks, etc. But really like human, centered, human oriented discussions and design around these events, around these spaces. I think that's something that would really enhance the possibilities of these communities to having more representation and also having more presence and visibility in the market.
Definitely. I will just quickly mention also that after this panel on the main stage, there is a session that will be moderated by Joanna from Cool Effect, and having a number of different Indigenous voices there as well. So check that out afterwards.
Hear that.
Yeah,
Can I say something?
please.
I also want to say that it's not just, buying and selling carbon credits. It's also about being heard and learning from other projects. And that's how projects get better. So I just want to mention that because I've had situations where a project developer said, well, I'm okay just selling my credits to you. And I'm like, no, no, you need to go and be heard and showcase your community, because everybody can learn from you and you can learn from other people. So that's how you make your project better. So that's, I just want to emphasize that there is a place for everything, and this is a great place to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking, we have breakfast topics. In the morning, there's always like tables with organized different topics. It'd be very cool to have like a sharing of experiences within communal projects, breakfast topic maybe for next year.
Yeah.
You can lead that. The 7 a.m. breakfast. Elsy, I'm going to come back to you. So Cool Effect is really a leader in many ways in a lot of these international discussions, and a participant in things like ICBCM and all sorts of different, important discussions. I mentioned earlier that globally there's been some kind of concerns regarding participation of communal communities and Indigenous peoples with regards to carbon projects. I wonder if you can speak about that from Cool Effect's perspective, how you're kind of facing these discussions and thinking about it, and also with regards to, like, you mentioned that you guys visit all your projects, so really thinking about how that, the importance of seeing the on-the-ground realities is, and bringing that to those international discussions.
Yes. Well, the truth is, Cool Effect, we take any positive or negative press seriously, because either positive or negative, you can always learn from it. So if it's positive, obviously we all, very happy about it. But if there is a positive, and then you're like, look at your projects, and that little positive thing is not there, I might be calling my project developers. But on the negative side is a learning lesson, like you learn from negativity. So you have to take it seriously. And if there is something, it's probably, so a journalist have a perspective and is talking about that perspective. And if you find sometimes that negativity, it's because you didn't see it that way either. So we learn from negativity, and I sometimes learn something, and I will call my project developers like, look, have you read this article? And most of the time they haven't. And I say, okay, I'm gonna forward it to you. Do you need me to translate it? And sometimes they're like, oh no, I already read that. And it doesn't affect us because this, and that. So you at the same time, you have to be kind of, you have to have, like, I'm the director of project relations. So I have a very strong relationship with my project developers. So I am constantly talking to them. And if there is a negative article, I'm not gonna hide from it. I'm gonna go straight on. And I'm gonna ask them. And if there is a problem, then this is an opportunity to fix it and make the project stronger. On the other side, Cool Effect is always talking to the media. It is important because we need to sometimes, sometimes there are articles that are negative, and then you say, well, that person really have never visited a project, because the reality on the ground is very clear. And so visiting project is so important. You need to see, because for me, any project, no matter where they are, I learn so much more by being there than reading the documentation. Like, everywhere I go, I just recently came back from Mexico, and there was so much more on the ground that they never wrote down on the documentation because it wasn't necessary, as they say. Mm-hmm. But you learn so much. So sometimes you read articles that are negative and you realize, well, that person has never been on a project site. And sometimes you say, oh, wow, that's a different way of seeing things, and we need to kind of talk to the project developers and say, hey, look at this. And we are all learning. And it's a young market, so we are all learning. So it's important to take those things into consideration.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I love that. I feel like what I just heard was you stand behind your projects.
Oh,
and I think that's so critical. Not to run or hide from the news or whatever it might be, and just to face it on and stand behind them. I think that's amazing. That's what the projects need. That's what the communities need. So I'm really thankful for you guys for doing that. And I also really liked what you mentioned about, we're all learning. I was sitting on a panel earlier about how to scale markets, and someone said, what we need right now is so much more humility. And I really agree with that. I feel like we have created an environment in which we're not able to make one mistake without the whole world falling down. And that's not really a healthy environment for anyone. And it's not an environment for success either. So thank you. Great. So I think, I'm going to go back to Tim before I open it up to questions from the audience. So I'm coming to you guys next. Get prepared. Tim, I'm wondering if you can speak to the role the California government has played and the design of the market, obviously, but in supporting you guys in the project. I'm thinking about, it's even in Mexico, they're kind of talking about regulating the voluntary market and also developing a compliance market. So in my mind, I'm also just wondering, like, from your perspective as a landowner and project developer, how do you think what do you think the best role is for the government in this market to support you guys?
Well, for the Yurok tribe, we're a federally recognized tribe, but I think my experience working with the state, that doesn't necessarily matter. I think the states a long way in their relationship with tribes. And, you know, with this, there's a newer consultation policy. I think that's made a big difference. But I think, you know, when the tribe can work with our partners on an equal basis, as a, you know, government to government, you know, sovereign to sovereign relationship and discussion, I think is very important. I think, you know, the Yurok tribe has I think, you know, like I said, a very clear vision of what our goals are, but I think we also recognize, you know, the implications for the state and, well, the world. And I think, you know, we want to, of course, do our part. You know, we're committed to the program, you know, and we want to see, well, we're committed to, you know, strong, good science. And I think, you know, where we can make improvements to the program, we want to see that. So, you know, we want to engage in that discussion with all of our partners, and especially with, you know, our state partners. I think, yeah, to improve the program, strengthen it, and engage on a policy level and with policymakers and with the legislature where we can. So, you know, we want to see this thing last. The Yurok tribe's been around for a long time, and, you know, we're not going to go anywhere. So I think, you know, the commitment's there, and, you know, 100 years isn't that long, right? But yeah, I think it's important, you know, to work as equals and have that respect as sovereign to sovereign. I think it's really important.
Very nice. And I feel like that also kind of circled back to what I was saying at the beginning regarding just the balance of trust that both parties have to have. And you guys are making a 100-year commitment. I think we also need to make a commitment to you guys of equal parts. I think that means, you know, building something that's going to last, building something that's stable and providing that security that you guys are going to have a project for 100 years and a market for 100 years. Great. I think we have time for some questions now. I'd like to open up for the audience. I don't think we have a mic, so please just speak loudly enough. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Elsy Alvarado, and I come from Mijares. So after learning and sharing experiences with local heroes, I saw the value of working together. And my question is, what do you think about creating an association of heroes with carbon credit projects to organize, share knowledge, and negotiate fair prices with buyers and service providers? And also another question is, like, could this strengthen our position in the carbon market and bring greater benefits to our community?
Hand over to you guys first.
There's actually an organization in Mexico, in Oaxaca, called ICICO. And that's an indigenous organization, and they have, I think it's 23 communities in the state of Oaxaca that work in that organization. So if you want to learn more, there is Rosendo Perez. He's not here, but or right behind you, Netzar. He's part of ICICO, and they do exactly that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oscar, anything?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, all these correlations, no, should strengthen the way the market works. No? I mean, as Tim said, no, so many voices, no, are stronger than one voice. So that's a principle, and it's very important, no, that these associations work in a very clear and transparent way. No? There's some associations, no, tend to then forget the commitment and the original objectives, no, and start fighting around, no, personal interests and et cetera, no. Then that could get complicated. But if you have like stable, transparent, clear frameworks, no, that work between the communities for pursuing those purposes, I think definitely would help.
Tim, I'm wondering if how you guys, you know, interact with other tribes and have any sort of relations to them capacity building support, exchange of information.
Experience with international?
No, tribes in
sorry.
the U.S. too. Tribes in the U.S. or international.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I'm sensing there's definitely a growing, interest, like I said, in cap and trade and tribal engagement. I've had discussions with tribes from Florida, Seminole Tribe, Quinault, in Oregon and Washington. So there's definitely a growing, I guess you can call it a movement. But like I said, I think the opportunities to really work together, it's not, we got to make it happen, right? It's not just going to happen. So, but I think that definitely here in California too, there's a small group of tribes that are project owners now, and definitely can have that the seat at the table, right? And so I think there's some momentum. I'm kind of sensing it, but it's going to take a real commitment to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Thank you for your question. Really quick, I also want to say a couple words, and I'll give another question. I'm going to respond to her question first. Sorry. So I love the idea so much. And a few thoughts came to my mind. One, within Mexico Forest Protocol, we have the role of the project coordinator. I'm sure you know. It's been a really big focus of ours to strengthen that role. And we've talked a lot about, and something John's floated a lot, is to really have some sort of joint training of the coordinators and bringing together the different coordinators. I think we need to figure out the funding mechanism for that, but I would love to be able to support something like that because I think it would be really, really fantastic. We also do have calls every Wednesday with all our project developers, and invite all the community members, particularly coordinators, but anyone, to join those calls as kind of an ongoing space for sharing of information between the different projects. But I would also encourage you to, create your own association if that is something of interest. I really do think that would be a really great mechanism for you guys. So anything we, the Reserve, can do to support that, I am completely a sus órdenes. I'll send it here first. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Jose Rivera from CO20, Colombia, and we have worked also with communities and local communities and indigenous groups in Colombia. We have had some challenges sometimes with the governance of some indigenous communities. They change sometimes every year their governance, and sometimes that's difficult in the permanence or accepting, like we can make a deal and arrangement with the one governor or authority, and next year maybe they want to change, and that's sometimes a challenge. How would you approach this challenge? Do you think that's the responsibility, like from changing the governance in the local communities or indigenous communities, or maybe from the standard? How would you see that? Or even from the buyer's perspective, how do you see those difficulties?
You want to take this? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, please. Maybe it's.
Actually, that's one thing is extremely important to a buyer, that there is continuity. The beauty of Mexico is that land rights are very clearly defined, and their governance is very clear. We know who the land belongs to, like the ejido belongs to the ejidatarios, the community belongs to the comuneros, and that is very clear, and the decision is made by the assembly. So there's no wiggle room there. And we love that. We love stability. And that's why Mexico probably is to me, that is the reason why Mexico is so popular. Because we know exactly who the president of the community is, and the comisariado, and everything. And they were elected, and they last for 3 years.
3 years.
And so it is very clear. So you need, in Colombia, I don't know the structure, but that will be a red flag, definitely, for a buyer.
I'll just add, so I think, yeah, the comisariado in Mexico, it changes every 3 years. So that was something that, was thought about at the beginning of developing the protocol, was how do you ensure that continuity of governance of the project when there is this change? And so part of the thinking of developing what we call the project coordinator, which is the elected official from the community to represent the project, was to ensure that continuity beyond the shifting of the comisariado every 3 years. So that role is just really, really critical for us in the project. But we certainly do see, I have seen times when a new, a comisariado is going to leave, and so they sense the pressures for getting the credits in before they shift to the new comisariado, because they want to show the results of their hard work. So we see these dynamics play out, but there is that continuity regardless.
Yeah, and if I can add something, the structure of governance, as Elsy said, Mexico is very clear, but I think that upon that, we have to build the awareness of the importance of the project for the whole community.
Yeah.
And as long as the project comes with good outcomes, and as long as more community members participate in developing the project themselves, whoever comes as the president of the comisariado, whoever comes is going to want to keep that project going on, because it signifies income for these communities, signifies a social economic transformation, and everybody wants to see that. That depends on the good outcomes of the project and the participation of more of the community members, and not only the leaders or the authorities of a certain ejido.
Such a critical piece, Oscar.
And the other thing that is extremely important is that, decisions are made and passed in the assembly, and they're written down and sealed.
And recorded in a
And
national
recorded.
registry.
So it's there. So whoever comes next, they have to follow what the decisions have been made. And for a buyer, that's extremely important, because we know how things are going and progressing. So.
Thank you. That's a really good point, too. Tim, anything? No?
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with the structure, but for the Yurok tribe, we have a 9-member council from 7 districts in the tribal lands, and a chairman and a vice chair. And there's turnover. We have elections every year, so there is turnover. And I think for us, we've been lucky enough to have some staff that was stuck around long enough to keep the reminding our leadership of our commitments, and of course our work with the state and others. So as a tribe with sovereign immunity, we recognize, we passed what's called a limited waiver of sovereign immunity, which gives us some legal a legal recourse if the tribe doesn't live up to its commitments. So again, it's documented, and I think there's continuity of just keeping new leadership reminded of their commitments.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. I think there was one more question. I think we only have a minute left, but.
Do your closing statement. It's more important. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll talk to them afterwards.
Okay, great. Well, I guess then I just want to thank this amazing panel. I don't know if anyone has any last words. I think we've probably said it all. So I want to really thank you guys. You did an amazing, amazing job. Some of the quick highlights I really found throughout all of this was just thinking about, from the very beginning, the need for capacity building, the need for trust building. Oscar, you really talked about kind of the understanding of all the different cultural considerations of each specific community you work with, and strengthening that governance and how that works. Elsy, you really talked about the responsibility to both the buyer and the project itself, and balancing that. I think that's really, really critical. And of course, Tim, you just spoke about all the amazing work you guys do and vision you guys had. And really, I think you mentioned one time that you guys had the vision to use these projects to buy back your lands. And that is incredible. But just even centralizing, it struck me that we need to centralize the vision of the community in these projects from the get-go, whatever it might be, buying back their lands, or it might be building a school, or it might be, I don't know, but from the get-go, making sure that we center that in the project. So thank you so very much, and thank you to this amazing audience.
Yep, thank you.